start us off with how did you first get into writing?
I, I didn't grow up wanting to be a writer. I would write for school assignments, but that was about it. I wasn't enthusiastic about it. I wasn't a big reader. It wasn't until a job I had back in the 90s where I was actually enrolled as providing pre-sale technical support for sales teams all over the world. And the group that I was in was responsible for creating a newsletter bi-monthly. And it was not like your usual 2 or 3 page newsletter. It was usually between 36 and 54 pages long. And we were responsible for all the writing, editing, pictures, publishing, everything. And started really getting into it. And it became all I cared about was doing the writing of the newsletter. I didn't care about the rest of the job that we had to do and, and write about. So that really got me started in wanting to do it. Um, After that, I, tried writing a few short stories and thought, at some point I'm going to sit down and write the full length novel. And took me about 10 years to finally get the motivation and get down to do it, but I did it. And since then, I decided I want to get back to it in around the pandemic time or a little bit before, and said, I want to do this as I ease into a sort of a post-retirement world. I want to do this more full time. And I've really come to love it.
It's fantastic. I think the pandemic really changed people's outlooks and like gave everyone free time to, sit down and actually do things that they never really had time for in
Exactly.
obviously.
Exactly. And I was still working full time even during the pandemic. And before that, when I would be writing, um, I seemed to be more productive when I had a full time job and writing in the margins than I am now, where in theory I have a lot more time. I guess you just find a lot more reasons to procrastinate, when you're not busy and booked.
Yeah. I always manage to procrastinate no matter what.
Exactly.
How do you stay connected with your readers?
I do it a few ways. So, of course, I do have my own website and monthly newsletter that I send to subscribers. But on top of that, I'm trying to stay relatively active on Instagram and a dedicated Facebook author page, separate and apart from my regular Facebook page. So that's how I do it the most. And I get out a lot and do book signings as much as I can, as much as I can get the bookstores to host me. And I really enjoy that, and I find that I'm much more successful. Sales are much better if I'm out there selling it than just, waiting for, the algorithms of the world to, do the job for me.
Putting a face to the book author on that's on the book, more connection.
Exactly. People see the cover and they think, oh, that sounds like my genre. Tell me a little bit about it. And it's not like I'm trying to be Mr. Salesman, but, talk enthusiastically about it and explain something to them. Sales do really well, in person. Again, that doesn't help the algorithms to show up in the results on,
Mhm.
Amazon or anywhere else, uh, but I feel good about getting the word out there that way too.
Definitely. How do you choose which character to center the story around?
Um, in the book that I'm writing now, like the one that's just released coincidentally today, it's a publication date. It's it's the third in a series. So I've picked my main characters when I did the first one in the series, which was called The Murder Game, and I focused on a female FBI agent named Jessica Jansen, and then introduced another character that sort of becomes her partner in the investigation, and eventually her life partner, named Kristen Reynolds. So they are the main focus from story to story to story. They'll be the one constant. Them and a few other characters I've managed to move through as well, but they're the main characters. And then with each new book, it's sort of creating a new suspense mystery. Introducing a new serial killer or whatever the case may be. But they are the main characters.
What's your process for writing your books? Are you a plotter or are you a pantser?
Depends on which book and which day of the week. You know, when I wrote my very, very first book, which was a political action thriller called Let the Truth Be Told, way back in 2008, This was back in the day when people had those little digital recorders with little mini cassettes. I I literally was driving about a 4 hour business trip, and I plotted it out on that mini recorder the whole way driving down. And that evening, I sat in the hotel instead of going out with everyone, and I wrote it out longhand and said, "Yeah, here's kind of how I see the chapters laying out," and I followed it pretty closely. And after that, the next book, the Murder Game, became a little bit of plotting, a lot of pantsing. Um, this book that's just released today, Blood and Vengeance, became very, very pantsy and then made me struggle a bit more. So, all that to say, as I'm starting the next book, I'm already starting the next one in the series. I've put together like a 65 or 70 chapter outline across 10 pages. I'm trying to force myself to be a little bit more of a plotter, a little less of a pantser, but I'm sure I'll waver back and forth between the two of them.
It's always interesting to see how different authors plot their books. Like, I feel like I would be more of a little bit more of a pantser than a plotter, but like I would be very stressed if I wasn't plotting the book.
Well, I know, and I was very stressed with this one. I really struggled in some areas, and unlike other books, I really felt like I had to step away at one point for weeks or a month or more to just get re-energized about the whole topic and get back into it. And when I did, um, I finally got past the block, if you will, the writer's block or the plot block in this case. And once I had that down, then I was like off to the races and felt like, gosh, I wish I could type 1,000 words a minute, so I could keep up with what's going on in my head. But it finally all came together, and I'm happy with the results. So,
That's really good. What's your
yeah.
approach to world and character building?
Well, luckily, I don't have to build new worlds in mind because it's reality, and I'm not writing science fiction or romantasy or anything. So, uh, I really kind of pick a place where I think about the story happening, and there are places that, in most cases, I know very well in my mind. They're not local. Like the Murder Game was in Dallas, I know pretty well, and I could research the rest. The latest book, Blood and Vengeance, takes place in mostly in Napa, California, which I know intimately. So I don't have to recreate the world. I can almost drive it in my mind, the places, the locations, and everything else. Um, Characters is a little bit more creative. Um, Again, I always knew I wanted this series to be focused on female protagonists and female heroes, if you will. I just find female-driven characters much more interesting than the typical male-driven characters in the same genre. So I picked on that, and then a lot of times, as I focused on the other characters, I kind of reached out and made them a combination of people that I know. Not that I know any serial killers personally, but I can take some people's personalities and their physical appearances or whatever, and kind of combine them together to create those characters. And I've also taken some real life characters throughout and inserted them into the book. Even if sometimes I use their real names, sometimes tweak them, with their permission, but kind of made the character them. So I've had a lot easier in that fashion than say someone developing a science fiction or something that out of this world, or um, something like The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings or anything like that. I didn't have to be quite as structured and creative. Yeah,
Did you have a favorite moment to in the book to write in your latest book?
I think in the end it was really the epilogue that was my favorite part. Not just because it sort of wrapped it up and set the stage for the next book, but it kind of was able to take a little virtual slap at one person who'd been a character in the previous book, Blitz Glamour Murder, and had a minor role in this one, but an important role, and it had the opportunity for my main characters, Jessica J.J. Jansen and Kristen Reynolds, to be able to go back and again confront this person and smack them down a bit. That was kind of satisfying, and also sort of kind of helped wrap up the story, and also I was able to set the stage again for the next one because these characters where they started off, I mentioned as a FBI agent and a investigative reporter in the first book, The Murder Game. Since then, they've now are working in the movie business, which started in the Glitz Glamour Murder, the sequel to The Murder Game, and now they're in the movie business, but also keeping a foot in the investigative world, becoming PIs, if you will, and helping investigate some of these serial murder cases. So got to focus on what the next movie production will be and how the events and some of the characters in this book that's released today, Blood and Vengeance, how that becomes the focus of the next movie. So you can kind of make a continuation as the series goes on.
I'm gonna be really excited for fans just to keep picking up who's been in previous books and going into the next books as well, trying to
Exactly.
find there when they pop up.
Yes, and I have to do a very good job of trying to keep those people straight and those events straight, so I don't say that they're 6'5" in one book and 5'10" in another or whatever.
Which of your characters do you relate to the most and why across all your books?
It's funny. Even though again these are female-driven stories, I actually identify very closely with the main character, Jessica J.J. Jansen. Um, Not that we share similar backgrounds. She was from Arizona, broken home. I was from the East Coast, all those, but I really identify with her. Um, uh, her where even though she'd been troubled, her values, her sense of right and wrong, her standing up in the first book, The Murder Game, standing up for a boss that they weren't close, to put it very mildly. But she stood up for him to make sure that he wasn't forced out of his job as a result of her, what the work she'd done and sort of the coloring outside the line she had done in solving that case. I really like that, and I like that about her. And I like how since then she's continued to grow and put aside her animosity that she had for her former boss and that he had for her, and they are now close and have actually worked together throughout these three books, even though he's still with the FBI, helping her, making her part of task forces that they're working on, looking for serial killers. I really kind of identify with her the most.
So fantastic that you can pull things from characters and it might not be like their personality, but it might be their values or motivations in the books as well that sort of stick with you.
Exactly.
Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer or have inspired you in your writing as well?
Absolutely. Probably the first one ever was Robert Ludlum, because I'm a big fan of political action thrillers, spy novels. So, the Bourne Supremacy or the whole Bourne trilogy, originally from Robert Ludlum, was a huge influence, as was early Tom Clancy works, like The Hunt for Red October, and they've all been really big influences there, as well as David Baldacci, probably my favorite author. He writes excellent suspense thrillers, murder mysteries, but he also started off with a few political action thrillers early on, and I'd say the three of them were the biggest inspirations that well, I never thought that I'd necessarily be as successful as them or have their innate talent. Um, I still thought I could put something together that I would enjoy, and I would enjoy the process, and maybe people would like reading. And if they compared it favorably to them, I would feel like I was successful.
Definitely. Has writing and publishing a books changed the way you see yourself?
Yeah, it's been challenging at times. The writing, sure, it's challenging, but the writing is kind of the easy part, as you've probably found as well. Um, I usually am able to write the book in approximately 6 months, give or take. And it usually takes about another 6 months to get through the steps of getting it to market. But as we've all found, anybody who's a writer, that the real work begins after that, and trying to get it published, trying to get it in stores, trying to market it, trying to sell it, trying to keep yourself out there, helping to do that. And oh, by the way, let's start on the next one to keep the books going and flowing. And it has helped me um, realized that I sometimes need some downtime and away time and just to, maybe sit on the porch and read a book by someone else and just relax and clear my mind, that I can't be 24/7, heads down doing it. I early on thought I could be because, again, that's how we all were in our real work lives. It's hard to set it aside. With this, since I'm having to create and market and everything that goes with it, I I found that I've got to find time to make some relaxation time, step away time, reading another book, going out on the boat, whatever it may be. I just need to do that and chill. Uh, Wine helps. Yeah.
Definitely. What advice would you give to a writer working on their first book?
Well, again, I try not to tell them how to do the process. I explain the process like you asked me first, about pantser versus plotter. I said you'll probably naturally gravitate to one or the other. I do tell them that if they can try to start off with a bit of discipline to find a time that works for them, whether it's 5 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock at night, or after the kids are in bed, whatever it is. If you can find a time that you can sequester yourself, maybe whatever works for you, and find a time to try and write, if not every day, as many days as possible, to get in the habit of writing and to get it going. I would encourage them to do that. Also, always encourage them, get it down on paper. Don't try to edit as you go. You'll drive yourself crazy and you'll never finish. Get it down, even if the words are rough, even if the words don't work, even if you've got a gap that maybe you just highlight it on the paper or put it in parentheses or whatever and say, come back to this, fix this. This doesn't work real well. Get it down before you lose it. And also figure out where your best ideas come from and how you're going to capture them. Um, some people have their best ideas while they're working. For some reason, I have the best ideas while I'm in the shower. Trying to step out of the shower and capture those notes before I lose them has become a challenge. But again, I don't want to lose them because they may never come back.
I guess it's also you need to have your first cop draft down because you can't, there's nothing to build on if you haven't got it down as well.
Exactly, and also I tell them, once you've got your first draft done and you've gone through and done some edits and rewrites and you feel pretty happy with it, that's the time you really need to have some outside opinion. So, find your people, find your, whatever it may be, 5 people, 10 people that can be beta readers for your books. And I've been fortunate to have about 5 or 6 people that have read most of mine, some of them, all of my books. Some others, one person just started with this book for the first time, which is really encouraging because she had told me that she was never a reader, and but she really liked, just a friend, and she really liked the murder game and glitz glamour murder. I said, "Well, would you like to be an early reader for this one?" And she said, "Yes," and she gave me incredible feedback. So I think that's very valuable and really a mandatory step in the process.
Definitely. And my final question is, what's the most important lesson you've learned as an author?
But you've got to persevere. There's a lot of ways to get your book into the market. Everyone says that their ultimate goal is to be published by like one of the big five, and find an agent, find a publishing house that wants it, gives you $1 billion advance and a contract, for a dozen books and all that. And you have to recognize that, for 99.9% of the writers out there, that's not reality.
Mm.
The good news is that nowadays there's so many other paths to get your book to market. Um, 15 years ago, the concept of self-publishing didn't really exist the way it works today. There was no Kindles, there was no Amazon to upload it to. There were some vanity publishers out there that you could pay them to publish your work, but they didn't help you do much after that. So the point is, you need to find, write the book first, then worry about how you're going to try and get it to market. Don't don't insist that if you don't get a publishing contract that you should stop. You can still look to self-publish it, get it out there, build on that success, and maybe take that success and parlay that into a publishing contract on the next one. The other thing I make sure to understand and convince myself is even getting a publishing contract isn't always like you're winning the lottery.
Mm.
Unless you're a huge, huge name, those publishing companies, especially the smaller ones, they're not doing that much for you. They may do a little bit of marketing, but it's still mostly going to be on you. They want to know what you're going to do. How are you advertising the book? How are you selling the book? What are you going to do for booking events? So they're not doing that much of it. They may give you a little break on buying your own copies to take around and sell. If they're not doing that much for you, unless your name is like a John Grisham or Stephen King, etc.
Mm,
So be prepared to do a lot of that work and legwork yourself, regardless of how you're taking your book to market. So look at what's most valuable for you and how you think you want to get it to market and who you want to market it to, and take it from there.
that's perfect advice. Well, thank you again.
Lessons hard learned. Yes.
Yes, definitely. And keep learning new ones as you go on through the process of every book.
Oh yes. Oh yes.